Whenever you deliver a speech, you're making an argument. You're arguing for new ideas and different actions. You're building an argument, but not being argumentative, and that's a fine balance to strike. Dale Carnegie said, "You can't win an argument, but you can lose one." In this video, you're going to learn how to build an argument without losing your audience. When Charles Darwin was looking at his research and his observations and starting to realize the theory of evolution, he was really at odds with this. As a devout Christian man, he recognized that evolution posed a threat to the traditional Christian views of the origin of life on our world. And he realized that if he was to get this theory across, he had to make sure that, number one, he was able to get over his own conflicts. And number two, he was able to overcome the strongest arguments from the other side. He knew that the whole power of the church and institutionalized religion was going to be against him. He needed to make sure that he had a cast iron argument ready to deliver. And of course, nowadays we know the outcome. The theory of evolution is the most widely accepted theory of how life on our world has come to be. So we can say that, certainly for the moment, Charles Darwin won the argument. The question is, how did he do it? What devices and what strategies did he use in order to make sure his argument came across clearly? We're going to cover 3 in this video today. The first technique to build your argument is to appeal to existing beliefs. One way you can guarantee not to persuade someone is to tell them they're wrong, to say that their belief, their worldview isn't correct. All that does is make them more defensive and more entrenched in those existing beliefs. Instead, what you've got to do is you've got to find the bridge between your beliefs about your side of the argument, their beliefs about their side of the argument. And if you look at most of the major conflicts in world history, they come around based on the 1% difference when there's 99% similarity. So you've got to think about how to appeal to that similarity when you're building an argument. Let's imagine that you're in an industry, for example. If you look at a disruptive company like Uber in transport, Uber didn't say taxi cabs are rubbish. They said transportation is important and here's what we think is a better way of doing it. If we're going to change the way that we use our energy in the world, we can't say oil and gas is rubbish. All the oil and gas companies are just going to become entrenched and double down. Instead, you'd make the common appeal to providing energy is important. Energy is what fuels our industry, it's what fuels our innovation, it's what gives us the comfort and security to do all the other things that we want to do in our lives. That's something that a wind farm company and an oil and gas company will agree on. So if you want to move a company from relying on fossil fuels to investing in green energy, you speak to those beliefs that they can agree with rather than those beliefs that might become more firmly entrenched, where you're going to create that conflict on the 1% rather than finding that common ground on the 99%. Start by appealing to the common beliefs that you have with your audience, and that's the first brick in building your argument. The second way to build your argument is to appeal to emotions first and build that up with facts. Facts don't convince people. They don't get convinced by an intellectual argument before they've been convinced by an emotional argument. And one of the prime examples of this in recent history in politics was Brexit in the UK. You had 2 sides of the campaign. The campaign to remain in the European Union built their argument around facts. They talked about economics, they talked about trade, they talked about this benefit, they talked about that benefit. They talked about, here are all the facts, here are all the reasons why being in the EU is better, and here are the facts about what will happen if we leave the EU. The campaign to leave the European Union was based on emotion. They appealed to people's sense of control, their sense of freedom, that leaving the EU was going to grant greater freedom and greater control. They appealed to fear. Fear of the political elite, fear of mass migration, fear of potential terrorism in illegal immigrants. Which side won? The emotion-based argument. I would argue that emotion plus fact would be better. I'd say that the Remain in the EU campaign was built around fact with very little emotion. The Leave the EU campaign was based on a lot of emotion and very little fact. But when pitted together, it was the emotion that won. If the Remain campaign had been able to appeal to people's emotion, maybe a sense of community, maybe a sense of aspiration, backed up with those facts, I don't think the result would have been the same way. But when you don't have both, emotions are going to win first. And it's the emotions that you've got to use to reach people, and then they will start to be receptive to the facts. How can you appeal to the emotions of your audience? Give them an idea of how listening to what you have to say is going to make their lives, or make their organization, or make their team, or make their clients better. When you get them to start to feel a certain way, tapping in some of those core emotions, happiness, joy, gratitude, excitement, enthusiasm, connection, whatever it might be, when they start to feel a different way as a result of what you're sharing with them, then they will start to think a different way. And that thinking differently will open them up to some of the factual arguments that you have. And I presume that you have them. If you're based just on raw emotion, you might get so far, but then you might lack a little bit of that credibility and substance when people start to scrutinize you a little bit further. So lead with the emotion, backed up with good facts. Don't lead with the facts and have no emotion backing them up. Our Facebook group, Rise and Inspire Speakers, provides you with a safe, supportive community to develop the skills to get your message out into the world. We host a virtual summit, Inspire Week, within the group every month, where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot to speak live in the group. This is a free opportunity you can sign up for month after month to practice your skills, try new things, and refine aspects of your story and message. There is a ton of educational content that gets pumped into this group. You can access ongoing educational resources that help you gain more confidence on camera, create more compelling speech content, and develop a deeper connection with your ideal audiences. Speaking of connection, the members of our community are fantastic. They are like-minded people who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world and will cheer you on and encourage you every step of the way. If you want to master your virtual speaking skills, then this is the place to be. The final building block of your argument is steel manning. You may have possibly heard of straw manning, and this is a technique that's quite often used in the courtroom and in law. It's where you take the weakest aspect of your opponent's argument, you break it down, make a big deal of how weak and pathetic it is, and you go, ha ha ha, I'm the winner, my argument is the best. Well, that doesn't prove that your argument is best. If you've only disputed the weakest aspect of their argument, don't the strong ones maybe still hold true? Straw manning is an attempt to try and score some points and try and create a superficial victory that will maybe get across some observers and get some people on your side, but to the more skeptical and the more scrutinous of your audience, they're going to see right through a straw man. What you need to do instead is steel man. And this is something that Charles Darwin ultimately ended up doing in The Origin of Species in his book, is he took the strongest arguments for religion and he broke them down and showed the evidence as to why these strong arguments weren't true. Another fantastic example actually comes from hip hop. If you've watched the movie 8 Mile, Eminem's movie, there's a rap battle at the end, and I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. He's facing an opponent and he's got to try and diss his opponent. He's got to try and come up with ways to insult his opponent that are better than the ones he's going to get back. And his opponent has a lot of ammunition on him, things that he can say about him. So what Eminem does in the movie, well, his character B Rabbit does, is he starts the rap battle by listing all of the things his opponent is going to say against him. Things like where he lives, his love life, his physical prowess, his appearance. He lists all these things. He's like, here are all the things you're going to say about me. I know you're going to say them about me. He lists all of those arguments first, and then he comes in with his own little pieces of dirt and scandal that he's managed to find out on his opponent. When his opponent stands up to speak, he's lost for words, because there's nothing that he can say that Eminem hasn't already said. By steel manning the argument, by taking the strongest aspects of his opponent's argument, sharing them, Eminem took power over them and diffused them. It's a fantastic example of steel manning. And that's what you need to do when you are arguing your case. You can't just ignore the opposition, or you can't just take the weakest parts of the opposition. You've got to take on their strongest parts, because if you can take on and dismantle the strongest parts of an opposition argument, then people who believe in that are going to go, wait, whoa, all those things that I thought were true, they've just shown me why they're not true. And that's when they're open to the new beliefs. That's when they're open to the new ways of thinking, because you've taken on the opposition at their strongest and shown that you're stronger. That's the power of steel manning. That's ultimately what Charles Darwin did. And that's how he managed to get the theory of evolution out there and into the general collective and the public consciousness in a way that some other scientists hadn't managed to do in the past, because they hadn't used this steel man approach. So next time that you're building an argument, think about putting these bricks into place, appealing to common beliefs, using emotion before facts, and steel manning the strongest parts of your opponent's argument. This might not help you win an argument, because nobody wins an argument, but you're definitely going to avoid losing the argument. And in the process, a few more members of the audience are going to come on side, listen to your perspective, join your movement, and start creating the change that you wish for them.